Hello and welcome to Adventures with ADHD, the YouTube series and podcast where I get to speak to fabulous neurodivergent people who share their stories with us and offer us tales of hope and enlightenment. So I'd love to welcome to you today, Joy Schulz. Hi, Joy. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing great, and I'm so excited to be here today. How are you?
I'm good, and I'm very excited to have you on. I've known you probably a couple of years now, maybe, and this is the first time we've been on the podcast together.
Yes.
So let's get straight in. Can you tell us a bit about where you're from? Because obviously you're not from the UK, and what it is you do.
Hi, yes. So I'm Joy Schulz. I am from Oklahoma here in the United States. So if you're not familiar, that's kind of middle south. It's what we so lovingly call the Bible Belt or Tornado Alley, depending on who you're talking to. And I am a holistic life coach, spiritual mentor, intuitive soul translator, sacred mirror for women who are ready to remember who they are and reclaim what's already been theirs. And so what I love to do is work with women to shed that conditioning. We'll get into my story here in a minute, but I grew up in a cult. And so it's been my life's work to decondition myself. I have a Taurus North Node, and I recently found out that that means that I really, as a child, didn't have a filter. I just took in everything, all the beliefs that were put on me, and that it's actually a big part of my journey to disentangle myself from those beliefs. And so it's been quite a journey. When I'm not working, I'm reading, I'm playing my Native American flute or shamanic drum. I love getting out in nature, and crochet is one of the ways that I keep my hands busy and let my mind just be.
Yeah.
It's been incredible. I actually started a little side business for my crochet because I do it so much that there's no way I could just keep everything I made, right? And I actually started it because of finding out that I was neurodivergent and needing something. It was one of the first coping things that I found. And so that's a little bit about what I do. I really love working with women. I use human design, oracle card readings, Reiki, and shamanic drumming as part of my work. And I just kind of weave all of that together depending on what my client needs. And I love being able to hold space for them because I have come on such this long journey. So I guess let's dive into that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Could talk to you all day. So interesting. But yes, your journey, quite a journey. So in terms of breaking it down a bit, let's start with your well, and obviously whatever comes into that, speak however you like, talk your truth. But yeah, how did you realize you were neurodivergent?
So the signs have obviously been there my entire life. They were missed for 37 years. I'm 40 now, so it's only been the last 3 years that I've known or been coming to that realization that I'm neurodivergent. So the labels that I wear are ADHD, autistic, and auditory sensory processing disorder. So I often struggle to listen to podcasts if I'm not actually reading the closed captions.
Yeah.
Um, Coming to that realization was a really long one. It started 5 years ago when I started dating my current partner who has ADHD. And so all of a sudden, my TikTok started showing me all these ADHD things. And I was like, okay, well, that explains a lot about him. But I feel a little bit of that. But because it wasn't talking about both ADHD and autism, I didn't put it fully
Yeah.
together that that's who I was too. And so then the universe, as it does, brought me a friend who was going through her diagnosis process and realizing that she was both ADHD and autistic. And so I started watching and learning from her experiences and mirroring that back to my own and realizing, oh, there's something different about the way my brain works. I've spent my entire life trying to put myself into the boxes of neurotypical, of the cult, of the perfect woman, of the hustle, of the girl boss, and none of it was fitting. And I got to the point where I was in full out autistic burnout. I had adrenal fatigue. My body was literally just shutting down on me. And come to find out, I also had underlying Lyme disease.
Right.
So, like,
Gosh.
everything was coming together and I just was shutting down. And it was actually finding out that my brain is just wired differently, that I'm neurodivergent, actually opened up this whole wealth of tools and accommodations. When I first started working with my cyclical living mentor, who's also ADHD autistic, she started talking about accommodations. And I was like, what do you mean? I've just been forcing my way through things. What do you mean I can like have accommodations, that I can make things easier for myself, that I don't have to try to be neurotypical? It has just opened up so much understanding, compassion, and grace for myself, so that now most days, even on the worst executive functioning days, I just kind of laugh it off. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm doing 15 different things all at once as opposed to one. That's okay. And it's just given me this level of grace and compassion and understanding for myself and for others.
Yeah.
And the more that I'm in community around other neurospicy individuals, it's just like I feel at home. I feel understood. I don't have to mask.
Yeah.
And masking has been, I was a very high masking and still can be person. I survived in corporate IT in America for almost 20 years. I know how to mask, and that unmasking journey has been huge for me. But it was truly
Yeah.
learning that my brain is just different that's allowed me to begin to accept that.
Yeah. And like you say, the compassion that you can now offer yourself and other people is, and I feel very strongly about compassion as well. It's
Yes,
such a game changer, isn't it?
it
And
really is.
and masking, do you find that you still put on the mask sometimes without realizing it? Because I know I certainly do.
I do. I'm coming to realize it a lot quicker when it comes on, as I'm learning to listen to my body and feel the cues in my body. But yes, it's still easy to put those masks on, to put the filters on, to slip into people pleasing.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think it's
absolutely.
after 37 years of doing that, I think it's going to take a while
Yeah. Yeah.
to decondition that.
And yeah, and it's all part of the journey, isn't it? But that
Yes.
realization and that consciousness of that's what's been happening, I think that's so powerful and liberating as well.
Yes, liberating is definitely the word for it. I know a lot of people get really sad or frustrated, and there's
Mm,
definitely a grief process as you go through the realizations of all of these years wasted. I put that in air quotes
yeah,
around trying to be neurotypical and experiencing all the shame and the guilt that comes from that. There's definitely a grief process, but then once you move through that, I fully believe it's a liberation.
yeah,
It's a true freedom to be who we authentically are meant to be, who we're
yeah,
designed to be. We didn't get this way by accident. I don't
absolutely.
believe anyway.
No. And yeah, it's a journey of grief, definitely. I realized like 13, well, longer, men 18 years ago. So I've had a long time to go through the grief and come out the other side to liberation. So
Yes.
yeah, it is a journey, and everyone's journey is different, isn't it? So
Yes.
now we're going to talk about your you were born, well, you were in a cult and
Yes.
spirituality. So I guess those two probably are intertwined. So tell me, well, about the cult. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not something I hear every day. So yeah.
Yeah. So I was born into a lifetime of generations of the fundamental Christian cult, is what I call it, because it was so high control.
Yeah.
And so, like, if you're not familiar, there's a documentary on Amazon called Shiny Happy People
Oh, okay.
that gives like an inside look into the belief systems that I grew up with. But
Right.
just from a wide perspective, all the things that you see in the news around the Christian nationalism, those were the levels of beliefs that I was taught. So everything from the man being the head of the household and the woman just being the person who bears his babies and is his helpmeet to help him in doing whatever he wants to do with his life or the vision he has, to being very anti-gay, anti-trans, anti-abortion, anti-women, just
Yeah.
in all the ways, all that Christian nationalism that you see coming out so blatantly now. That's how I was raised.
Wow.
So there was no room for being different. There was no room for being anything less than perfect in what the church said Jesus wanted you to be. And if you were not that perfect woman, then you were constantly hustling. You were constantly trying to be perfect. You were constantly in those deep, insidious levels of shame and guilt and blame and fear. And so I grew up in that there, because there was no space for struggle, it was just pray about it. Just give it to God. Just give all those emotions that you're feeling. They're just part of why you can't trust yourself. And so you just need to pray and give that away, because all of those, any emotion other than joy or happiness in Christ was not something to be felt. They were to be suppressed or given to God.
Yeah.
And so, even as a child, when I was struggling in school, I didn't read truly until the third grade because I was so bored with see Dick run. Jane went up the hill. It wasn't until my mom gave me a actual chapter book that I started to actually become a reader, and now I'm a voracious one.
Yeah.
But it was all of those little ways of keeping you from questioning, of keeping you from being who you are. And I experienced pretty much every type of trauma that there was from the time I was born. My father was extremely abusive, and the cult really just fosters that. It's a safe haven for the abusers. And so I was never able to speak up because it was a shame to the family, and everybody outside the family just loved him. He was wonderful, because he was bipolar with narcissistic tendencies. And it was really rough. And so I grew up just as a shell of a person, but also always knowing and having that deep well within me that there had to be something more. There had to be something better.
Mm.
And so, I got married at 22 because it was the only way I could leave the home. My family
Right.
literally believed that a woman went from her home of birth to her husband's home. And so I was always under that control. And so it wasn't after I got divorced at 26 that I actually began to leave the church,
Right.
because I was actually shunned by my church community because I was a divorced woman, because I had failed at what God had put in front of me as my mission to be that wife. And that was incredibly hard at the time, but it was one of the biggest blessings because
Mm.
it's allowed me to find my spirituality. I'm now a very spiritual person. I am a priestess of Goddess Isis and doing her work, working with the people and helping hold that energetic blueprint for where we're going. That's part of my design as a human design projector. Is to hold that frequency and to role model it as we're building this new world.
Yeah.
A part of that is having that neurodivergence, being able to see the patterns and see things differently, but also being really connected to who I am. And a large part of that is my spirituality. And so my journey has definitely been one of suppression and abuse and victimhood to those middle years of truly coming home to who I am spiritually, healing all of those years of trauma. That took a long time
Yeah.
to heal. And I'm still working through it. Over the weekend, I had a big healing relating to a breakup of a girlfriend of mine back in high school.
Right.
That was huge sisterhood wounds, huge I'm not enough
Mm.
wounds. And so, along with, I think, the neurodivergent rejection sensitivity that
Oh,
we all
yeah.
have, right? Along with the spiritual beliefs that I grew up in, it has made me who I am, but it's been a very long journey to get here.
Yeah. Yeah. So, gosh, so being shunned from the church was what led you to on your true spiritual path. I guess it's hard to know, but do you think had you not got divorced that you may still be living that life? Or do you
Very much so.
yeah.
At the time, I couldn't make a decision on my own. I had been told that I couldn't trust myself to such a degree that I didn't trust what I wanted for lunch, much less what I wanted for my life or my marriage.
Yeah.
And I was at that point polling everyone from my family to my coworkers to my college professors at the time. It was just, I was bleeding over everyone because I had nothing within me to fall back on. I had no internal safety. All I had was shame and guilt and a broken heart and a life that was just getting worse and worse and worse the longer I went on. And I was truly suicidal
Yeah.
at the end of that marriage because life had just beat me down and I had no tools to deal with it except to, of course, pray and give
Yeah.
it to God, which was not working.
No, of course. Wow. I mean, what a journey. And you mentioned, the kind of being able to look at things differently, being neurodivergent. So, how do you think that's kind of helped you being neurodivergent with your spiritual path?
Even from the time I was a young kid, being indoctrinated in all of those beliefs, there was always something that didn't feel right. And I was always seeing these inconsistencies, and I would get in a lot of trouble for pointing them out. So I
Right.
eventually stopped because you weren't supposed to have questions. You weren't supposed to see inconsistencies. But also part of my homeschooling journey was that my mom taught me to think. And looking back, I'm wondering if that was not her
Oh,
subtle resistance.
yes.
But I was taught to think. So I was taught to look at, well, this passage in the Bible says this, and a few books later it says this, and these aren't congruent. So what are we supposed to believe? And so take having that training and always knowing that it just never felt right. I often said it felt like an inherited relationship, not something that was my own like it was supposed to. And so then as I was leaving, as I was becoming more what my mom would say liberal and beginning to think for myself, I was able to use the pattern recognition. I was able to use that critical thinking, that ability to zoom out and look at the big picture while also keeping those nitty-gritty details in mind that allowed me to begin to successfully pick apart that huge belief system because I was literally indoctrinated with a belief system and had to systematically go through and decondition that. And do I believe this way? No. Okay. What do I want to believe instead? What feels good in my body?
Yeah.
And that's a big part of what I help my clients with as we're going through their design or when we're in a card reading or a Reiki session. It's what's coming up for you. What's this old belief? What's this old story? What do you want to believe instead? Because we get to choose. And that's something that so many of us don't realize or we're never told
Yeah.
is that we do get to choose.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when I realized I had a choice of over what I believed, it was like, the blinkers were taken off. I was like, oh
Yes.
wow, this is amazing. So that's what I try and let everyone else know as well.
Yes, exactly. Actually, the book, The Four Agreements,
Yeah.
was a huge one for me at the beginning of my journey, and it's still a book that is hugely impactful every time I read it. But that first part about it all being agreements and how we can choose, like that was a huge realization for me, and it's a book I recommend to everyone.
Yeah, yeah. And that's how we kind of got talking. Well, we've been in the Goddess Isis Priestess training with Jen Thomas, haven't we? That's how we
Yes.
we initially met.
Yes.
And then we had a chat about the book, The Four Agreements, which is one of my favorite books as well. It's been life changing, and I really wish everyone would read that book if they feel called
Yes.
to, because I mean the agreement about don't take anything personally. I mean, when you say those words, it sounds a bit like, well, how can I not? But when you read the chapter and over again and apply it to your life, it really does show, doesn't it, that whatever anyone
Yes.
says or thinks is not about us, it's about them. And
Exactly.
I guess that's true for the kind of the church upbringing you had as well. It's not necessarily truth, it's just one person's truth. And
Exactly.
as an autistic person, it took me years to realize that people's opinions were not the truth.
Yes. I was literally taught that what everybody else thought was the truth.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, don't take things personal. It was huge for me, and I credit that to helping me with my rejection sensitivity.
yeah.
I will say that for the most part, I don't suffer from that anymore because I'm also able to have that grace and compassion and understanding that it's not about me most of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, and I feel really similar. Like it doesn't affect me half as much as it did. And then
Yeah.
occasionally something happens and it's got me again. I'm like, okay, this still needs work. Things just don't,
Yes,
that's the thing. It's a process, isn't it? Things
it
don't
is.
just suddenly change. But I think with us, our ADHD brains, many people think, well, it's not changed, therefore it hasn't worked. But it's process and practice, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And I've personally found for myself and a lot of my clients is that as we are working on releasing something, that last time before it's like more fully gone for this layer, it's like we feel it again like we've never done any work. And it's just us remembering that, oh, it used to be this way, but I don't have to be this way anymore. And then all of a sudden that energy clears and we don't struggle with that as much or if at all again. But that last time as it leaves our energy system, it can be rough.
Yeah.
It's like, I've worked on this. Why is this taking me out so much? It's
Yeah.
just because it's on its way out.
Yeah, and that makes so much sense to a kind of fairly recent issue that I had. And it really was like in my face again, and it felt really, really painful. But you're right, it was that one last push, and off it goes, you know. And
Yes.
when I say off it goes, it doesn't just go off by itself. You know, we have to do the spiritual work as well, don't we? So I'm just
Yes.
conscious of people listening to this, that, you know, spiritual work is not just saying, oh, everything's fine, you know,
No.
pray it away or whatever. Um,
No, definitely. That's spiritual bypassing. That's
yes,
not the spiritual work.
yes, and it is work, and it's called work for a reason, but it's so powerful and enlightening and freeing.
It really is. And you don't have to wait till you get to quote the other side. It's not just this one long slug of a journey that you're in the mire and you never get your head above the water. It is a journey. You're going to have those highs, you're going to have those lows, but it's the continual process of always taking that next step,
Yeah,
always taking that next right action, always being open to, okay, well, this trigger or activation is happening. What can I learn from it? What is it bringing up? How can I heal and shift through this and not experience it in the same way in the future? But it is work, and it's looking at our shadows. It's looking at the parts of us that we have repressed because either we felt shame or someone told us that we should feel shame. And it's learning to love and accept those parts
yeah,
so that we're not rejecting them, so that we have that full unity between that masculine and feminine, the ADHD and the autistic, the, whatever. It's that unity within ourselves so that we're not constantly fighting against ourselves.
yeah. Absolutely. You say it so well as well. Human design. So what's that? I've heard a little bit about it, and you work with this, don't you? So what is it?
Yes. So, human design is joke that it's astrology on steroids. So, it's a synthesis of astrology, the chakra system, the I Ching, the Kabbalah, quantum physics, and biochemistry. So, it's a lot of different lenses of how you can view yourself, both energetically, spiritually, in the mundane, and it's all put together in one system that's kind of mechanical, so that you can kind of look at it and be like, okay, my energy works this way and it goes through these centers. And this is why I struggle in this area because I don't have consistent access to that. But I do have consistent access to this area of my life or type of energy. And it gets incredibly detailed all the way down to the different archetypes that correspond to each part of your DNA. So, like, it gets incredibly
Oh,
detailed. But what it does is it allows you to see how you were designed, not how life and society have conditioned
mm,
you, not how the neurotypicals have told you that you need to be. It's truly how you were designed, how your energy works, how you were meant to make decisions, how your emotions process through your body, how they feel, how it feels to other people, your life purpose. It really addresses you as the whole human and really helps you to see your innate wholeness, your innate perfection.
yeah,
Because I do believe that we are all perfect.
yeah,
It's just we've been using someone else's measuring stick and calling us imperfect. But I believe that we are truly perfect for our mission for this lifetime and what we're here to do and what we're here to experience. And I believe we're here to experience it
yeah,
all the joy, all the pain, because that's how we learn. But also all the things that we desire, because those desires are given to us for a reason. I believe that when we're incarnating, we choose the life, we choose what we want to experience so that our soul can grow. And so, like, even just looking at your basic body graph, that chart that gets generated when you put in your birth details, you can see your soul's curriculum depending on what's open, what's not, that kind of thing. But that's getting really granular. So, anyway, it's a really great tool for helping you to see who you are, see that conditioning and then begin to work through it. And
Sure.
so when I do like a human design reading, I'm giving you all this information about how you were designed, tips for working with that energy or to decondition it. There's a host of journal prompts and affirmations and other tools that you can work with. And then if I know that someone is like ADHD or autistic, I tailor their reading to incorporate those things as well, because it can really change how that energy feels in our body as opposed to someone who is, say, neurotypical. And most of my clients at this point are neurospicy like myself, because we vibe and we
Yeah.
view the world differently. And so we kind of just, birds of a feather flock together, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's fascinating stuff. I am really interested, and I will be in touch with you about the human design stuff, definitely. Yeah.
Amazing. And human design has been a huge part of my healing journey and coming to understand. I think if human design hadn't opened the door for me in 2020 to understanding that I'm built differently than what I was trained,
Mm.
I'm not sure that I would have been open a few years later when my friend was telling me all these things about her neurospicy journey. I think it opened me up to, oh, I am built differently.
Mm.
And then I just hadn't found the tools at the time via human design. So I found them via the ADHD and the autistic. And working with all of it together, I believe has given me, along with that spirituality and that all the shadow work and soul reclamation, all of those kind of things to get me to where I'm at now, where I feel that I am able to step into who I truly am. I'm able to work with my clients and hold space for them because I have been through all of these things.
Yeah, yeah. And what was I going to say? It's gone. It's gone. It might come back. It might not. Who knows?
Believe me, I know how that goes.
Yeah, no. So, what advice would you give to people that are just recognizing that they're potentially neurodivergent? And, you've talked a lot about shame and guilt and all the conditioning and layers of stuff we get. People can be very hard on themselves, can't they?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
what advice would you give to somebody that's just realizing that?
That's a really good question. I would say to seek out the people like yourself who do not view it as a disability, who do not view it as something wrong with yourself, because we all need representation. We all need that someone to follow or to look up to realize that it can be okay,
Yeah.
that this is a gift, not a curse. And so I would say to seek those out, people like yourself, seek out those tools that help you to support you in that grief and then the deconditioning journey, the learning to accommodate yourself, learning to view those things as gifts, because it is a process. But I would say that if someone is telling you that there's something wrong with you or that these are your limitations, you can't do these things, I would say look somewhere else,
Mm,
because it is truly a gift. It is truly how you were designed. It's not something wrong with you.
mm,
And obviously, I'm sure if they're here listening to this, they're already on that journey to some degree. But there is still a lot, especially in the United States, around it being a disability. I mean, they were just saying a few weeks ago from the head of the government about how autistic people will never hold jobs and they can't work and they can't be productive members of society, and they want to start a registry of neurodivergence. And so there's still so much stigma. And so I would just say be aware of the energies that you're taking in, because it really does matter. If you're constantly hearing how you can't be a member of society, how you can't do these things, it gets really demoralizing.
yeah. Yeah, and like we were saying, we can take on board those opinions as truth if we're not careful.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, even in conversation, I was having conversation with a friend a couple of weeks ago who holds a very different political stance than I do. And I started innately, or not innately, but I started questioning myself in my subconscious as to my own stance. And when I realized it 2 days later, then I was able to be like, no, I know what I believe. I know how I
Mm,
feel. These are the reasons I've made these decisions. But it was in conversation. And I took that on board without realizing it.
yeah.
And it took me 2 days. And that's where I'm at now. Before, it would have taken me months
Yeah.
if I recognized it.
Yeah. Wow. So 2
So
days
we take
is
on these things, and it's really easy to not realize it.
yeah.
So just be careful
Yeah.
what you're listening to and what you're taking in, because it really does make a difference.
Yeah. And be curious and question things. Thank goodness
Yes.
your mum kind of got you doing that from a young age. Yeah.
Yes, I'm very grateful.
Yeah. Wow. Joy, thank you so much. So before we finish off, how do people find you and get in touch with you if they want to?
Sure. So my website is radicaljoyfulness.com, and that's the same on Instagram as well. I'm working on getting a Substack started, so it'll probably be the same there, but I'll keep everybody posted on that.
Yeah. Fantastic. Joy, thank you so much for coming along and for being so brave and open about your journey. It's quite a journey and you've been very generous with your time and what you've talked about. So thank you so much.
No, thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Yeah. Great.